I think most songwriters take songwriting styles for granted, and some probably don't even realize that different styles exist other than the one that they've just always utilized. So in this video, we're going to talk specifically about performer style songwriting and its benefits as well as drawbacks. So overall, what is performer style songwriting? Well, it's basically characterized by songwriting with a single instrument. In fact, this is probably the songwriting style that most songwriters default to using. If you think about somebody sitting in their basement or on their back porch and they're holding their guitar writing a song, or they're sitting at the piano writing a song, that would be sort of the quintessential image of somebody utilizing performer style songwriting. Overall, if you're sitting with a single instrument, coming up with that instrument part, whether that be a guitar chord progression or a piano part or bass with a bass line, and then figuring out the vocal on top of that, you are almost definitely utilizing this style of songwriting. Other hints that you're probably utilizing this songwriting style is if you are either implicitly or explicitly sort of writing the song with live performance in mind. Now, you're doing this implicitly whenever you are just sitting with a guitar and figuring out, okay, how do I write a killer song? And by killer song in this circumstance, what I really precisely mean is how do I write something where when I play a guitar part and sing, it is great. Now, that is technically a song, but specifically what you're trying to figure out is how to have a great combination that is worthy of performance just from the guitar part you're writing as well as your vocal part. Some other hints that you're probably utilizing performer style songwriting is if you're not really thinking about the final recording of the song, or you haven't even really thought about recording the song. If you are planning on writing the song and then maybe later you'll record the song, you're almost definitely utilizing performer style songwriting. And performer style songwriting can also apply to if you are writing with a band. So if you're writing with, say, your 4-piece band and you're all thinking, okay, what's the guitar part that you're gonna play? And what's the guitar part that you're going to play? And what's the bass part that I'm going to play? And what am I going to sing? Then you are still utilizing performer style songwriting. It's just as a group instead of as an individual. Because again, you're primarily thinking about in a live situation when we are performing the song, what is the part that you're going to play and the part that you're going to play? All right, so what are some of the main benefits of the performer style of songwriting? I think maybe the main benefit of all is that this is the easiest way to write a song that translates to a live performance exceptionally well. And the reason for this is simple. You're writing the song to be performed. You're not thinking about a whole arrangement and how the strings can help really make the bridge shine, or how the synth parts can really add a nice texture to the background of the song. No, you're not thinking about that. You're just thinking about, hey, how can I make people feel things just by me standing there with my guitar and singing? Or you're thinking about how can we as a 4-piece band make a song that will translate to live very well with him playing that bass part and her playing that piano part and me playing that guitar part. How do I make sure that that song is absolutely killer with just those 4 instrument parts? You can sort of think of this like writing a play versus writing a screenplay. If you write a play, you are literally writing the play and the story to be executed in an environment where there are actors on stage performing before a live audience, which is going to be different than the way you would write something if you have the advantage of movie cameras and being able to be really close up to an actor's face or really far away, or having digital effects that you wouldn't have in a play. So the way that you would write a screenplay would be different than a play. And then specifically to go with this example, it's going to be way easier to have a killer live play if you write a play and not a screenplay. So in the same way, if we write with a performer mindset, it's going to be easier to have the song be killer in the context of a performance. Another benefit is this is going to be the most natural transition for people who are primarily musicians, which I don't have any stats on this, but I would guess something like 90% of songwriters came to songwriting with some story that goes like the following.
I figured out how to play an instrument, or I was an instrumentalist. Maybe I played piano or guitar. I was generally a musician. And then I thought, hey, it's cool to perform other people's songs, but wouldn't it be cool to perform my own songs?
And then you start songwriting. That's probably 90% of the people watching this video and 90% of the people who songwrite. But assuming that to be true, for most of those people, this is going to be the most natural way to write songs, which is why I think most songwriters actually utilize this style and don't even really think about how there are other ways to write songs. And the reason that this is going to be most natural is you're first and foremost a musician. So it makes sense that starting your song with a performance mindset where you're just sitting down and thinking, okay, what do I think would be a killer guitar riff that would be fun to perform and that people who are listening to my performance would enjoy. And usually with performance style songwriting, you're also starting specifically with the music rather than the lyrics, which again is playing to your strengths. Your strength is the fact that you started learning piano when you were 5 or guitar when you were 8. Your strength probably isn't writing lyrics yet because maybe you just started writing poetry and lyrics 2 years ago when you started songwriting, which is way different than the fact that you've been playing guitar since you were 8. So this is easily the most natural type of songwriting to do if your story is somewhat like the story I was telling of you used to be a musician and then you figured out, you know what, I want to write my own songs. And another benefit is that this songwriting style will naturally emphasize your main instrument. If you are sitting with your guitar and you are writing a song, most likely you're not even going to really start making it into a song until you find a guitar part that you really like, that you think is killer, whether it's a catchy guitar riff, or whether it's a chord progression that you think is really different and memorable and has some interesting chord voicings, and then you're like,
ooh, I came up with this cool guitar thing, let's build a song off of it.
So naturally, that's going to result in most of the time you having more killer guitar parts than you otherwise would have, because your whole song is built off, let me improvise until I find a guitar part that I think is really cool and then build the song off of that. So if you write a guitar part that you don't think is very good, you're probably not even going to make it into a song. So performer style songwriting can be the best way to make sure that whatever your main instrument is during the songwriting session, that instrument part is going to be killer. If you want to have an awesome piano part that's really memorable, start writing your song with a performer mindset at the piano. If you want to have a killer guitar part, start with a guitar. And if you want a killer bass line, well, performer style, but grab your bass instead. So it's always good to talk about the benefits of every songwriting style, but we also have to talk about the drawbacks. And I think the main drawback of performer style songwriting is it tends to be the most limiting when it comes to writing your instrumentation. For the most part, with performer style songwriting, not only are you limited to write utilizing the instruments you play, but you probably are even more limited to instruments that you can play and sing at the same time. For example, if you play guitar and also the flute, you probably literally have never utilized your flute in your songwriting, but you actually probably could. If you're a better flautist than you are a vocalist, because you just kind of are learning to sing now because you want to be a songwriter, so you got to sing now, but really you were actually quite good at the flute in high school, maybe you were first chair, it might actually be better for you to write your vocal melodies by improvising with the flute than with your own voice. But you might never consider doing that because you're utilizing performer style. So you're sitting with the guitar and you're improvising with your voice because you're thinking like a performer. This is how I'm going to perform the song, so this is how I'm going to write the song. And that can be very limiting. And it's also limiting because it limits the sounds that you have. To take it to an extreme, if you only have an acoustic guitar, and that's the only instrument that you play, then every single one of your songs is going to be built off of how you are inspired with an acoustic guitar. So you might end up writing all singer-songwritery, James Taylor-like songs because you're improvising with the acoustic guitar, and that's the direction that you end up being influenced. And you might not think that you're influenced by the sound of your instrument, but you almost certainly are. We all are. The timbre of instruments absolutely is something that inspires us in different directions. An easy test for this is if you're a guitarist, play your acoustic guitar, improvise for like half an hour or just 5 minutes and just see what you come up with. And then switch to electric guitar and then do an extreme effect. Maybe utilize a ton of distortion or a ton of reverb or echoes or delays. Use some effect that is clearly different than the acoustic guitar sound. I bet the way you improvise and the different voicings you use are going to be totally different. With the acoustic guitar, maybe you utilized open voicings, used open G chords and open E minor chords. But then when you transition to utilizing your electric guitar with a lot of distortion, you might have shifted to a lot of power chords and some soloing, and maybe you started utilizing minor keys more than major keys. It's amazing how much we will change the way we play just based on the sound response we get. Another test for this, if you say are a pianist or a keyboardist, if you have a keyboard, just turn on the string setting or the harpsichord setting or whatever other sounds come with your keyboard and notice how the way you play, it might not change right away when you change to the string settings, but it will change pretty quick. And you'll do things that you probably wouldn't do with a piano sound because strings sound different. And the sound is going to inspire you in different directions, even though you're playing the exact same instrument. So the way you play physically is the exact same, but you'll end up playing differently just because of the sound difference. So all to say, with a performer mindset, oftentimes it is great for, say, having a killer piano part for every single one of your songs, but it can also be limiting in that you might end up, if you're only a pianist, having every single song feel like it's a piano song, it's a piano song, it's a piano song. Whereas if you utilize some other songwriting styles, specifically producer-style songwriting, it may be pretty common for you to actually build a song off of maybe an organ part or a string quartet part, because you're utilizing virtual instruments in your recording software to actually make an arrangement, and you're not really limited by the specific instrument that you play because you're not thinking with a performer mindset. Another drawback of performer-style songwriting is that it often cannot exactly be a help with lyrics last mindset. Now, when I say lyrics last mindset, what I don't mean is that you literally write the lyrics last. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, even though I think lyrics are arguably the most important, if not second most important part of a song, I think lyrics are incredibly important. I still usually actually write them last. I just compensate for that by spending a ton of time on them to get them right. So I don't mean literally saving them for last. I mean lyrics last in the sense that they are your last priority. So you not only write them last, but then you kind of like throw them in at the end more as like an obligation, like, oh, I guess I gotta have lyrics. I gotta sing something besides law. If you already sort of struggle with that attitude or not really seeing the value in lyrics, this songwriting style is probably not going to help with that. Because with this songwriting style, you're probably going to have a melody you really like and a guitar part you really like. And the temptation to just be like, oh, if I just come up with lyrics that work, the song is done, and I want the song to be done. Now, admittedly, I don't think this is really a weakness of the songwriting style so much as it's indicative of most of the people who would do this songwriting style tend to be first and foremost musicians. And the songwriters that are first and foremost musicians tend to be the songwriters that don't see as much value in lyrics. If you were somebody that was a poet first and foremost, and then you were like, you know what, I'll put my poetry to music and write songs out of my poems, then you, of course, are going to care deeply about lyrics, and you're going to value lyrics maybe even way more highly than you value the music. But if you're somebody who's a musician that has always cared about the guitar riffs and the way the music feels, and you haven't really paid attention to lyrics, you're probably going to be the person doing this songwriting style, and that also tends to be the most common person that really doesn't see as much value in lyrics or doesn't prioritize lyrics as much as they probably should. So hopefully this was helpful to you. If it was, something else that will probably be helpful to you is my free guide on 10 different ways to start writing a song. Whether you're new to songwriting or an experienced songwriter, there will be ways in here that maybe you haven't utilized yet that might be helpful for you to write some different songs and get out of your creative box, or to just figure out where to start if you don't really know where to start. There's 5 from a lyrical standpoint and 5 from a musical standpoint. Be sure to check it out. Link in the description down below. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. I'll talk to you in the next one.